Today, June the 7th, marks World Anti-Counterfeiting Day. It's estimated fraudsters holding up to a fifth of the R2 billion in pharmaceutical market. The World Health Organization estimates that up to 30% of medicines available to people worldwide are fake. It's quite scary. Is the pill that you're popping permissible or not? This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight we're looking at the cost of counterfeit market with Paul Ramara, who is a partner at law firm Spoor Fishe. This is big. It's quite scary. I mean, I go to my doctor, I expect to be prescribed a legal drug, if I need one, and I expect to go across the road to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy to hand me a bona fide drug. There's a good chance it might not be real.
Well, with pharmacies, they're a little bit more controlled, but the situation is quite worse when it comes to pharmaceuticals. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, 10 to 15% of medicines worldwide is counterfeit, and Africa accounts to 30% or over 30% of those fake medicines. So it's a very big problem.
Where are these medicines being sold? Where are they being distributed?
So if you look at Africa, most of the African countries like Nigeria, you find that, you know, all of these medicines are sold sometimes in the streets, sometimes in taverns. So it is indeed a very big problem.
Now, is it a problem of expired medicines, or is it a problem of fake medicines being packaged as the original, the ethical product?
Look, Bruce, it could be anything. When it comes to counterfeiting, it's all about deceiving the consumer. You could find that a medicine has got wrong dosage, or it does not have the correct ingredients, or does not have active ingredients at all. So when you're thinking that you've got the right medicines to heal whatever ailment you have, you might not have nothing at all. Obviously, that is a big risk.
So how then is this being combated? Because, I mean, you hear wonderful cases about guys who get the pirated DVDs, for example, and they place pirated DVDs in the hands of these guys on the street corners, and the only thing on the DVD when you get home and you put it into your DVD player, apparently people used to do that at one time, and the message comes up and saying, thank you, the $50 you just paid for this fake DVD goes to fighting piracy. That's a fun way of dealing with fake DVDs. In the drugs market, though, incredibly hard to stamp out.
Yeah, so look, I think the first port of call is the country itself. In South Africa, we're a little bit fortunate in the sense that we've got legislation in place to fight counterfeiting. So we've got the South African Counterfeit
When last did you go down William Nicol Drive, just up the road from these studios, and get offered a Louis Vuitton bag and Gucci shoes? You can have all the legislation that you like, but we live in a world of fake. We've got great legislation, but nobody's actually trying to stop it. And if they're not trying to stop it on the street corners with obvious fakes, what sort of headway they're making in the drugs industry? Well,
there's a lot of fight that we're putting up with the Department of Customs, which is a division of the South African Revenue Services, where basically what we are doing is to fight this sketch of counterfeiting at the port of entry. Because all of these things come through China. I mean, China accounts to 80% of fake goods. So we're fighting it firstly at the border before it comes into the country, and that's what we're focusing on. Of course, yes.
But once it's through and it's sitting in a spaza shop in a rural area, I mean, a packet of Panado is a packet of Panado is a packet of Panado, well-faked boxes. It's not like they've got a watermark so you can tell the difference. Is it possible, as a consumer of these products, to tell the difference between Panado and Panado?
Well, I suppose it would be very difficult. But as Spoor Fishe, we've got investigators that we work with that are all over the country, and they constantly pass information to us about suspected counterfeit goods.
So how does that work? I mean, do you send these guys undercover to say, I mean, let's hit this particular part of the country this week, go into spaza shops, go into markets, buy boxes of medication, send it off to a lab and have it tested? Is that the process?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we've got investigators that do market sweeps. So they'll go into the market, they'll check what is happening, say, in Johannesburg, and once they have the information, they'll pass it on to us.
But they do it undercover. They don't sort of go in with a card and say, we're coming to test your drugs. Do they do it undercover? How does that work?
Undercover.
So they'll come in and buy a box as a sample, yes, and then test the veracity of that medication?
So they'll go to a shop and say, conduct a test purchase. Once it's available, They'll come to us, we'll report to our client and say, here's what we found, and they will give us instruction to go ahead and conduct a search and seizure operation with assistance of the South African Police Service.
What sort of drugs are being faked, though? Is it something like as simple as a Panado, or is it more serious stuff, life-saving drugs, which if you get the wrong formulation or you don't have the right active ingredient, you could die, or the medicine could even kill you?
Well, counterfeiters look at what sells, so they do market research. I mean, we have situation in Nigeria where, I mean, in 2010, there was a fake paracetamol, and over 100 babies died. The same situation repeated itself, I think, in 2008, where over 30 kids died as a result of taking a fake paracetamol again.
So how do you combat that? I mean, because these things are on the streets, you can do your tests, you find out that there is a proliferation of this fake paracetamol in a market somewhere. What, do you send the cops in? Do you send the red ants in? What do you do?
So, I mean, the issue of counterfeiting is something that we must all fight together. It's not something...
No, you sound like a politician now. What do you actually do? No, what do you actually do? In the case of you've tracked down some potentially lethal fake paracetamol in a market, what would be the next course of action?
I mean, essentially what we'll do, just as a shortcut, we'll obviously report that to the police, we'll file a complaint affidavit.
And how useful are they in that process?
Very useful, very useful. So we have taken down a lot of counterfeit goods with assistance of the enforcement agencies. But these are things that you might not always hear about, but there's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes.
Okay, so you managed to take the drugs off the market, but the pipeline remains in place, the supply chain remains in place. How far up these, because I suppose as with the illicit drugs trade, you can get the street guys, but how far do you penetrate, particularly when this sounds like global organized crime?
So obviously we work with our clients. Once we've hit the guy, we'll obviously work with the enforcement authorities and the courts to find the source of the counterfeit goods. And when we have information about the source, we'll pass it on to our clients who've got other agencies worldwide, including in China, to follow up on this information. In that way, we are able to make an impact. But again, I go back to my earlier point to say that this is something that we must all fight together, because there are people that are obviously fueling the demand in the name of the consumers.
Is the drugs industry doing enough to combat this problem? If one considers the possibility within a banknote, for example, of a watermark, is there not some sort of mark, sort of hologrammy sticker that a genuine drug can carry and that is only available on the genuine product, that's not available on the fake products, and find some sort of mechanism to do that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of work is being done. Obviously, I mean, the pharmaceutical, they are brands and they are self-funded, so each will do different things. And of course, you've got other companies using holograms to try and distinguish their original product from counterfeit goods. But that information may not be passed to the consumer, and that's the problem. And that's why you have days like this about the World Anti-Counterfeiting Day, where we basically sensitize people about the effects of counterfeiting.
I mean, there's also an element of common sense that you've got to put upon your customer to say that if you're going into a market and you're buying a box of Panados, I use that as an example because it's generic for paracetamol, but you're going into a market and you're buying a box of paracetamol for half the price that it costs you in a registered pharmacy that's got a pharmacist's certificate on the wall and a registered number, the odds are it may not be real. I mean, at the same time, consumers are not going to be stupid about this.
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to pharmacies, and I'm talking from a South African perspective, this is a little bit more control, so you don't have that problem. The problem with counterfeit are those that you find in taverns, and that would obviously be stuff that would be coming through some harbors, because obviously it's very difficult for our officials to stop each and every consignment.
But and again, it comes down to an education issue. So, I mean, should the drugs industry not be also punting, putting posters up in taverns saying, don't buy a paracetamol in this tavern, and pay the tavern owner to carry the poster? Run TV campaigns to say, if you're not buying stuff through a registered pharmacy outlet, it might be fake. Look out for the following telltale signs. They're not doing that. I'm not seeing any of that proactive behavior?
So I think as a matter of common sense, no one should be getting any medicine from a tavern.
Well, if it was common, nobody would be doing it.
But yes, of course, there are those challenges.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. We need to up the campaigns of awareness. And it's important that we do that. And in a way, I appreciate CNBC to raising this issue and making the...
Telling your clients, listen, don't be cheapskates. People are dying or could die, and there's fake stuff on the. I mean, this issue of counterfeiting. I know you focus primarily on the pharmaceutical sector, but it is pervasive. I mean, we see fakes around us all the time. I'm sorry, there are not that many Louis Vuitton handbags made by LVMH in France, as we see on the streets of Joburg. There's a lot of fake around. Really, we as consumers don't treat this issue of counterfeiting nearly seriously enough, is my perspective on it. We're willing to tolerate fakes.
I agree with you. I mean, there are really two people that, or two kinds of people that the counterfeiters really target, and that those low-income earners who may purchase the product because they don't have options, but you also have got people who are sophisticated, who want to look like the Jones. You know, they want to really look nice, and they go on and they purchase this product deliberately because they want to keep up with the fashion trends. And that is the problem, and that is what is fueling the problem of counterfeiting.
I saw Jeremy Cronin getting off a plane the other day with the Louis Vuitton man bag. I was tempted to ask him if it was real, but I'm sure it was, because cabinet ministers earn big salaries.
I really hope so.
So do I. I hope it was real. Next time I see him on a plane, I'll ask him, Jeremy, is that real? And let's see what answer he comes up with, because there's a lot of the stuff going around. But yeah, it's a bit of fun when it comes to DVDs. You might think that pirating the latest Netflix series is absolutely harmless, but you're part of the same problem as when it goes into the drugs industry. You can't be critical of one part of the counterfeiting industry and tolerant of another because it suits you to look good in your new threads with your fake LVMH products or whatever the case might be. Paul Ramara, partner at Spoor Fishe, talking about the very serious downside of a fake pharmaceuticals industry driven out of China. Billions of rand every single year, attempts to smuggle it through the borders. And if you're buying a headache pill, unless it's the next morning from a tavern, double check that it's real. Till next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.